Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your boy CIZY, or you might just know me as Collis, the host of the Voices of Value podcast. Back at it again with another episode of the show. And look, I tell you guys every single week, we're gonna come back with a fire guest. And I've yet to lie to you. I've yet to lie to you. Okay, that's a lie. I lied to you a few times in the past, but we're here with another fire guest. I'm super happy to have him on the show. My guy Seth, who I've spoke about in the past, recommended we, chat, and here we are a few months later making it happen. So with that being said, my brother, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Babir Sultan with Fav Trip. Fav Trip is a chain of convenience stores and gas stations here in the Kansas City and surrounding area. I've been in the business for over 16 years. I studied at UMKC and graduated with my executive master's at Rockhurst University.
I love it, man. I love it. And with that being said, we have to dive into the early history of Babir, and let's start with, and I know this is an annoying question, but I want to hear maybe 2 or 3 ways people have totally butchered your first name. Okay, I want to hear 2 or 3 ways people have totally butchered your first name, specifically when you were a young kid or a teenager in that age group. What were older adults calling you, and you had to correct them?
I mean, usually they land pretty good, but a lot of the time it's like Baba, or I say not Baba, but there's an R in there somewhere, but Babir, or some of them like to poke fun and saying buy me a beer is one of them, but yeah, for most of the parts they get it right. It's Babir.
I love it. I love it, man. So where did you grow up? Like, where does the origins of your story begin? Are you I know on LinkedIn it says Lawson, Missouri. So is it Lawson? Is it KC metro area? Is it Colorado? Where do the origin stories of Babir start?
My younger youth time, I spent a lot in Pakistan. So when I moved, when I was about 25 or so, I moved to New York and did any and all kinds of odd jobs, from Dunkin' Donuts to construction, doorman job, whatever, you name it. Eventually, I landed at a JFK airport as a computer network admin. So I landed that job. So originally from Brooklyn, New York, and then made my way to Missouri. Came to visit, fell in love with Missouri. I never looked back.
I love it. I love it. My girlfriend's from Brooklyn, so I gotta ask, what a neighborhood or a specific part of Brooklyn were you hanging out a lot in?
Coney Island, a lot of
Nice.
Pakistani community down there, so that's where we usually land at.
I love it. And in respects to your roots, is there a large Pakistani community here in Kansas City that you're able to tap into, or
Yeah.
or is that like, because I know a few Pakistani kids I went to school with, but I haven't heard of like a large group or a large community of people or a specific neighborhood. So talk a little bit about how you were able to find community once you landed here in Kansas City, and why did you come to Kansas City in the first place?
Yeah, we came to visit friends and family who were in the convenience store business. And when I came here, I was thinking I'm going to work for Sprint, and I did land a job at Sprint to work for them in the IT department. But we'll get into that as well. But yeah, back to the community side of things. Usually, if you have a mosque around there, a church, like a Muslim church, a lot of community surrounds that area. For here, that would be Bannister and Blue Ridge area, where we have a store as well near there. And the other one in Overland Park is 151st Street, Overland Park. There's a lot of, Pakistani, Indian kind of community down there.
I love it. I love it. And you threw something in there that I know we didn't plan on like diving into the history of this, but would you mind sharing like the, I guess, similarities and non-similarities, or the history and the roots between Pakistan and India? I know there is a close tie there, just from, again, my girl's from Brooklyn, so I spent a lot of time in New York and just, made a lot of different friends and have heard a little bit about the history. But for those folks who are ignorant to the history of that, would you mind just sharing whatever you want to?
So Pakistan, India, before 1947 or 49, it was one country. It wasn't divided. But then the British came along and, it set their rule over there. Eventually, there was a lot of fights among them. And then eventually Hindu wanted their own side of things and Muslim country wanted their own thing. And they got their independence basically from each other. And to this day, there's a part of the partition, like Kashmir, is still divided. Where does it go? But originally it was one country, but then it got divided out where, Pakistan gets its own territory and India were meant for Hinduism. Hindus and Muslims kind of got separated, but originally they come from the same before 1947, I believe it was.
And from like a cultural perspective around like food or music or dress wear, like how similar are the cultures between, let's say, what part of India is closest to Pakistan? Is it northern India, eastern India, western India? I'm not familiar
I'm not
geographically.
100% on which side is close, but they share borders. They're close to each other, for sure. But as far as like culture and dressing and food goes, for sure, there's a lot of similarities. Can't really tell apart sometimes too, but definitely. But if you go look at, like the Islamic traditional dress code is very different than, somebody that's a Hindu is very different. So, but a lot of food side of things and everything, obviously, the way maybe we eat meat, it might be different, certain ways. I know in Hinduism, I believe you're not allowed to eat a cow. And for us, we do eat cows, beef and everything else, but has to be cut in a certain way. So there's a lot of similarities for sure because of the history they have with each other.
I love it. And did you grow up with siblings? Are you one of many? Are you one of two? Are you the only child? Like talk about the family background.
Yeah, many siblings. Overall 8 total, including myself. So I grew up in a
Same
big
over
family.
here.
Yeah. Big family for sure, with a lot of different perspectives.
I love it. I love it. Do you feel like that was a benefit as you started to get older in terms of understanding business or understanding relationships or how to approach, interacting just in general? Do you feel like your older or younger siblings helped you learn or give you a new perspective that way you didn't have to learn like a second time around, if that makes sense? I know the youngest of 8 myself, I got the opportunity to learn from all the mistakes of those before me, so I was better off.
Yeah, definitely. You could always learn from everybody, but it starts usually at the house level for sure. So if I was looking for educational inspiration, one of my older brothers got his doctorate degree. He was one, and then everybody has their own takes on it, where my younger brother's way more patient than me, as I would like to be, so you get to take the best part from everybody and kind of become your own character yourself as well, right? So definitely everybody definitely has influence. Besides your parent, sibling, I think are the next closest things to have an influence on your upcoming, bringing and everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, speaking of parents, like when you think about maybe a characteristic or a character trait or like a certain lesson that either one of your parents taught you that has really like been a core principle when it comes to business and running Fav Trip and how you interact with your employees, what character trait do you think you pulled most and has been helpful that you grabbed or learned from one of your parents?
Yeah, definitely. When you're kids of immigrants, right? You definitely the big idea is you came in the land of opportunity. You're definitely going to work hard no matter what. So the hard work, the day and night kind of, yeah, that definitely I adopted from my parents. When you come from another, we're here for a reason to make a living, to support the family and everything. So definitely got that from my parents to work hard no matter what.
I love that, man. I love that so much. And, when it comes to education and entrepreneurship, oftentimes, especially in immigrant families, there's sometimes a little bit of drama there. Like, no, I want you to go become a doctor or a
Yeah,
lawyer and go to school. And then, on the flip side, maybe a kid wants to go chase a entrepreneurial dream of theirs or go open a business or go, I don't know, to the military. And sometimes that creates like a line between the parent and the child. What was that experience like for you and your family? Was there any drama there around the entrepreneurship side of things?
yeah. In early stages, definitely. Especially Asian parents, they always want their kid, whether it's a doctor or a lawyer, is common. Doctor more than anything. In the early stages, there was that thought, but eventually, education was big on them because my parents were educated. So they were really pushing me on that, and I was very much against it. Eventually, one thing, I don't know what triggered, but they had a hard time keeping me out of college instead of sending me college anymore, right? Even at this age, I continue to get education at Rockhurst, whether it's data, science classes or anything like that. But business as well, for their mindset, once you own a business, you want to sleep and breathe, everything is business, right? And that was the mindset when we got into that. It goes back to the mentality of working hard, but then I like to find a balance, right? Of it's also that you definitely want to work hard, but you also want to have a focus on your health, your mental health, physical health, and everything else for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. And we'll dive into that a little bit deeper, but I do want to question, like, what was the draw to school? Like, you've been in business, I believe, for over 12 years, 13 years. So what was the draw to go back to school? What was that like desire, I guess? Like what inspired you? What was that trigger? Because I know for a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, they're like super anti-school. I would never go back. There's no reason for me to go back. So what was that for you? What was that story?
Yeah, I almost my education experience got quite the opposite. A lot of people get the business later and the education first. So I was running one of the stores when I started going to college. So I was learning on the job as I go along, right? I had no idea. I recently watched that Amazon show, Susie, Miss Marvelous, I think it's called. Um, Susie starts interviewing people for a job, and as she's interviewing, she keeps going back and forth to see what she should say. So that's how I felt. Like I watched one of those episodes last night, and it was literally that same feeling where I'm asking my professor about hiring people, marketing, branding, all that stuff. So it's pretty good being able to apply what I learned. Was definitely a blessing where I had the business. At the time, I only had my GED at the time when I started my first business, the first store. So definitely education played a key role in kind of helping me with that, where how do I grow from here and all that. So I'm the opposite way. And anybody saying anti kind of business people, yeah, I think it goes back to if you're getting education for the sakes of credits and everything and you don't have no use of it. Because I have a lot of friends that got their bachelor's or, PhDs or masters, but they don't apply that in their actual life or their business or even job. Yeah, I would be totally against that as well. But if somebody has a place to apply it and you learn and this is your actual career, you got to continue to learn and grow if that's, some of your strength as well. And we'll talk about Strength Finder books as well here, where that made me realize some of my strength and how do I hone in on those more and more. So I thought something's
Absolutely.
wrong with me that I keep driving back to get more education. I can't stop. I wish there was an on and off button, but we'll talk about that too.
For sure, for sure. And that kind of brings up this like thought process, like what if we started pushing the reverse, like you just said, like maybe kids, especially kids who are interested in going to school for like business or something like that, go out there and work for a business owner and or go out there and start your own business and or if you're already in a position to be in a management position at a business, really try to hone your skills there, spend a few years there before you go back to school for business. That way the principles that they're teaching you, the knowledge they're teaching you can be a little bit more applicable and you can be a lot more decisive on what actually applies modern day versus what's like old news. And so
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Some of the
love
books
that.
that you read in college, I see that where, they're talking about some older companies, I think if they were talking about, MySpace or something, I was like, God, these books are so old and they're $300 and I'm paying out of pocket, you know, it would really piss people off, right? But some people just going in for the sake of their parents and credits, yeah, it's definitely a waste of time. And on that note as well, like you said about, applying yourself or getting the right education kind of thing, where UMKC has this great program called e-scholarship program. So it really walks you through on if you were to start up a business, a startup, basically a tech focus or anything, how would you go about things? So it's really eye opener on that. So that's one of those programs I highly recommend. So, and I'm sure there's else ones out there, but in the meantime, like just to graduate, you have to take a lot of courses that might not mean much, but I mean, once you get the basics out of the way, really honing in on what you want to do. I literally had an internship at the Roastery Coffee Company, even though I had my business, just to learn about marketing and how do companies do and all of that. And I very made it transparent with them too. I told them, this is why I'm here. This is my internship and reasoning for it. I'm not looking for a career. Do I have my job? I just want to see how do you go about your packaging? How do you go about this and that? So definitely, the actual experience really matters, but I'm not an anti-education at all. I think there's a need for that for sure. But getting the right education is a skill in itself too.
That's real. That's very real. I do want to ask you, and I know, there's a core foundation inside of you around hard work, especially from that immigrant household background and just being able to see that from your parents. But how did you manage your time? You're talking about, managing a store, you're talking about an internship, you're talking about school, like, and we're talking about we're talking about school, not basic school. We're talking about hard work, like
Yeah.
required classes, required credit hours. We're talking about coming out of pocket to pay for school. And then I'm sure you have other duties you have to tend to as well within the family and then socially to be able to like maintain your mental
Yeah.
health. So how were you managing all that and how challenging of a time was that for you?
Yeah, I think we have more businesses now, and I think I got a lot better at it managing time now versus when we had a one store, it felt like operating 100 of them, right? We didn't have a second person do a shift. I was working day and night, right? Sleeping in the store, had no idea how to hire people. That was really, so the thought of even going back to college didn't occur. So eventually when you get extra help, then you would say, okay, if these are my hours of class, I could be gone from the store and the second person is handling business, working 7 days straight for 3+ years. Even to this day, like one day off is enough for me. 6 days of work is good. But when you're an entrepreneur, you have your business, you're never off really, right? Uh, but now I really hone in on my calendar. If it makes it to my calendar, it kind of gets done. If it never made it there, it never gets done kind of idea. So I'm married with 4 kids now, so it's more important than ever as well that I make time for personal, and then I have to make time for myself as well. So I think back to if there's one thing I have to say is being very intentional about your time is key, right? If I have to take a class, I know when the semester starts and ends, start making arrangements, do things that you got to do to set in motion. That way, if you're gone, you're not missed for 2-3 hours from the business, right? So that's how I learned to delegate as I went along. So I thought if I don't do it, it doesn't get done right kind of mindset. I want to do it. But delegating and being very intentional. If there's one takeaway, one word is like intentional. Be very intentional. If you have a mission, a goal, how intentional are you? How does it work its way into your calendar and you work it? If it's important, it gets done. Like a lot of people talk about, well, I'm too busy. I can't go to college. Well, I can't start a second store. I can't, if it's important to you, I can't start a YouTube channel, which we'll talk about as well, right? If it's important to you, it needs to be done. You make time, right? So no matter how busy I am, I make time to post a video on our YouTube channel. 78,000 strong
Killing it.
subscribers would hit that 100,000. 90 million reach on Facebook for a convenience store. Here in Kansas City is a big deal for us. We
Hell
think
yeah. Hell
and
yeah.
it doesn't happen without our fans.
And the funny thing is, we'll dive a little bit deeper on it a little bit later, but just to touch on it really quick, the funny thing is, I have been watching your guys' videos like unintentionally, like unconsciously on Facebook, just not knowing that it was like, and I was like, Fave Trip, Fave Trip, Fave Trip. I've never seen a Fave Trip. And then I started seeing Fave Trips around town. I was like, wait, Fave Trip is here. But then I just assumed, okay, this is a nationwide, like BP or something like that. And then I
Yeah.
was like seeing all this content. And then once I saw that y'all were getting big numbers again, I was like, yeah, this definitely can't be Kansas City only company. And then Seth introduced me to you, and I went to your LinkedIn page and I was like, hold up. I was like, so he must not be based out of Kansas City. Oh, nope, it's Kansas City based. Oh,
Yeah.
no, all the locations are in Kansas City. So that's really dope. And with that being said, can we kind of dive into Fave Tripping? Can you give a brief history from like store one to, I believe you said store like 10 stores or
Yeah,
12?
we're 12 stores strong, and the way we operate is we operate 3 of them under the Fav Trip umbrella, and because it's like the branding side of things where we control the brand. The rest we more play of the landlord role where we lease out stores to other operators, and they could be BP, Phillips, whatever they desire. Right? For us, the stores that we operate they're branded Fav Trip. That means we don't have and this I learned through, experience, good and bad experiences and education where, signing up with a big company like Philips or BP, you're tied in with them 10 years. Besides that, there's no real brand love. They can open next door to you. They don't care as long as they're the ones selling gas. So
So
our
let's dive into that as well. I mean, you can kind of choose. I don't want to get it too confused, but like, what is? Can you kind of break down the gas business in general?
yeah
Like, what do you mean signing up under this big
yeah
company, or like how does that? Is that franchise? Is that like a
yeah
license fee? Like, what does that look like?
yeah. Here's the simplest way to explain it. Where if I have a store and I don't have a contract for anybody to send fuel, uh, I could go to BP and say, hey, why don't you allow us? They give you permission basically. It's not like a franchisee where franchisee is more like they give you a book and training and everything, and they tell you how to operate. These shell companies, BP, they don't do any of that. Phillips, they just give you the rights to use their image and you sell their gas, but exclusive their gas. You can't buy from anybody else. So what they do is they'll say, we're going to rebrand your store. We're going to spend about $30,000, $40,000, sign here. And you sign and you're stuck with them for 10 years and you can't wiggle. The prices could go haywire. And they really don't care after that. Once you sign the contract, good luck getting a meeting with them anymore, right? They're
Right,
gone.
exactly.
No loyalty at all. We saw that and we said we'll front the money for the image if we could get the branding correct and just learn as we go along, and we'll give the money for the image. And we've done that, and now we're to the point where other fuel suppliers will give us money for the making a Fav Trip, and then we could operate that way. But we felt that that personal touch, the loyalty was missing. So now we could pull gas from any place that Quick Trip or Hy-Vee or Phillips does. We can even pull Phillips if we want to, right? It's like we have that pull. Even though we're small, it's good to be able to choose who we're getting gas from, who has the best price. But if you're with BP and they had a spill somewhere and their prices are 10 cents higher than anybody, good tough luck. You just got to buy from them. And whatever the market does, you're at the mercy of the market, right? If I'm buying gas at $3 a gallon and everybody in my server area is 285, I'm going to be selling it for 285. I'm going to lose money every day and can't do anything about it. So that's
Right.
how, kind of the logistics side of things of when you sign a fuel contract.
And in the convenience store slash gas, gas station business, am I right or wrong when I assume that the majority of the money comes from inside the store, not from the
Yeah,
gas itself? Could you kind of break
definitely.
that down?
Yeah, the breakdown is outside, 5 days a week. You don't know what the cost is going to come out. You don't control that, right? One day you can make 10 cents, the next day you might be losing some, right? So it's a scary market. Inside, you're always going to know what you're going to make on Pepsi, and you control that as well, Pepsi can and all that. So a lot of us depend on the inside still to be consistent or better. And outside, again, it's very fluctuating, and you just never know. You're at the mercy of the market. That's what the gas is almost meant to be, sometimes a loss leader. So you get people to come to the pump, work your way, they make their way inside is where you really make money from, for sure.
Got you. That makes sense. That makes sense.
You are correct. You are correct. You're on to assume that, yes.
When you say it fluctuates and you have no control over that, how do you, this is just like a customer interest, like a consumer interest. As we drive by the store, I'm like, yo, how do they know when to change the numbers, like about the
Yeah.
price? Like, how do you guys find that out? Do you get a text message every day? Hey, move the price to 285, or like, what does
Yeah.
that look like?
But every day at 6 p.m., the market usually closes for, so as far as for us, for the lock in on the fuel thing. So then you'll see, if your costs, whatever it is, you're really at the mercy of the big boys that are in your area, how they're going to play. If their cost is $3.15, they're not going to go on and say, we'll keep selling it for $2.99. You're waiting for them to go up and you go up right away. But if you're a small operator and the market is really tough, where you have Walmart, as Murphy USA in the market, and they really, any market they land, usually the little guys disappear because they usually run them away by keeping the price so low that people can survive off of that. So that's how it usually is. The market kind of controls whatever your area is. That's why you might notice in Kansas, since the price comes in a little higher, 10, they're usually a little higher than Missouri. So you're at the mercy of the street price, what it's going to be. And it's very individual. It's not like Lee Summit price is going to be similar to Independence or Grandview, right? It's very different because it comes in different too.
Yeah, and like it's funny when you're in the car and you know we don't understand. A lot of people, especially if we're not in the industry, understand how it works. So like somebody will be like, "Yeah, why the hell is in South Kansas City the gas 20 cents higher than it is in this more wealthier neighborhood or something like that?" It would be a little confused. You'd be like, "Shouldn't it be higher in the wealthy neighborhood and lower in this neighborhood?" But it just doesn't function like that, at least from what you're saying.
No,
So
no functionality like that behind it. No.
and so I want to talk about, brand has to be extremely important then from that
Yeah,
perspective. If you're making money off of what's inside, you need to draw people inside. You need to
yeah,
have people wanting to continue to come back because of the relationship they have with that gas station and the vibe it brings them, the energy it brings them. Quick Trip's done a good job with that just inside. Like everybody's like QT, the vibe, the colors, the pay. There's just a whole bunch of different things that like attract people to the store. So yes, from a branding perspective, how have you guys at Fav Trip been able to like gather attention and build genuine relationships with the consumers that customers, consumers, friends, however you refer to them,
yeah.
come in that come into your store on a daily basis?
So we call them the Fav Trip family. So that's what we call it online. So branding definitely stands out. You got to back it up with operation, right? So we really wanted a clean, neat image. So it starts on the outside, works its way indoors, and then the staff and everything. So and the other thing for us was like, if we're Fav Trip, we're the only Fav Trip for us. But when we're like we've been through many other, brands like Valero, Phillips, and Shell and BP. We were not fans at all when there was no differentiator of these brands, right? So if some gas station down the street is a BP and we're a BP and they have a bad name, it kind of trickles down into your store. So there's really no control over it, right? It works great for somebody that has no idea branding and they slap on BP and it works good for them. It's good. Plus, they have the power of the credit cards, where a lot of people they're giving incentives on their credit cards. They use that. For us, it was an uphill battle, really establishing ourselves online and offline. Going back to being very intentional, keeping the store nice and clean. Because a lot of times, what happens if your contract is up with Phillips, they'll come and or require you and tell you you're the one that's going to take down our image. If we see it on here for the next 2 weeks, we're going to stop finding it. So when they take it down, they really tear up the store. And the small operator, if he can't afford it, he just leaves it as it is. And a lot of people think it's a closed down station or something happened to it. I don't want to fill up from here. It looks kind of tacky. We definitely didn't want to be one of those stores early on. Like we took pictures and we told our staff, we're going to do better. And I'm flattered, thanks to our staff and the love for our Fav Trip family, is that people think we're some kind of big chain. We get requests from Canada, Mexico, and other states, Detroit and Florida. People like, hey, when are you going to open one here and this and that? And we have no intention of going, nationwide. It's not just our plan, and might change in the future. But right now, we like the home small feeling of a station brand that you could control. We had the opportunity to allow people to use the branding as well for incentive, where 1 gallon off their thing of them. So, but we went back to the idea that if they don't operate the way we operate, they don't greet the people we do, they don't play the music, the scent that we have in the store, everything matters. So if you can't control it, we shouldn't give away our rights for the name as well. So we've been very intentional on keeping it in house, and we learn a lot from Quick Trip. I actually met the CEO of Quick Trip at an event, had a great one-on-one. They're really an amazing company, for sure.
And so when we think about like brand drivers, I know you were mentioning, the scent in the store, the music, like different things that really drive home this is the
Yeah.
Fav Trip brand. What like three things come to mind for Fav Trip? Like for somebody who's never been in a Fav Trip, what are they going to notice that's different about Fav Trip than Quick Trip or the local BP?
I think the personality of the staff, we have a way of, making sure they feel welcome, not very structured. Like even with Quick Trip, if you go in, their ideas in and out quickly. 5:45, thank you, have a good day, next please, kind of thing. We don't do that. We want to be fast and we are fast, but we also have, I feel like our stores have personality. Each one of them has their own artwork, mural artwork supported by a local artist, right? Bannister is very different than Independence. Grandview, we opened up from ground up. is very different. And we're teaming up with the local school to have artwork on the wall and inside and everything. So it's very intentional, and there's personality to each store as well. And the staff, I think, are the main drivers that show personality. Each store has a drive-through. We were doing drive-through before it became popular, way before COVID. Now we're right after COVID. A lot of C-stores operate, or gas station operators, we need to have a drive-through as well besides having a gas station. But we've been doing it, and our drive-through continue to be busy. And we have delivery service. We're one of the few stores right among 7-Eleven before COVID. Right at COVID, we started doing full store in-store delivery, you know. So
What does that look like, by the way? Break that down. Is that like through partnering with third party people like
yeah,
DoorDash and things like that? And how do
right.
you register your business to be able to do that? So talk about that process.
We have a third party that we use. It's sort of like a white label that handles the back end software side of it. Funny enough, and a lesson for entrepreneur, and this podcast a lot about teaching people as well. We had a full ready code to do delivery like 3 years before COVID, and I was sharing it with staff and saying, we're going to have a delivery service. Who would be lazy to get delivery, from a convenience store? No way. But right before COVID, we were like 85%, 90% complete to deploy it. But when COVID kicked in, a lot of lockdown happened. We teamed up with a company called Varoom, and I'm actually an investor in the company as well. They had it figured out. They knew exactly how the delivery worked, and they had all the database available, the SKU data and everything. And we scrapped our entire things. It was hard to do because you almost get attached to the code, and we're not going to figure it. If we figure it out, it's going to be way too late. So we went in and teamed up with them. I was actually doing the deliveries myself. Talk about being hands-on. I would go in my car, do the initial deliveries. A year later, we teamed up with DoorDash. And actually, a couple of months ago, we signed up with Uber as well. So we're able to do that with this. We, knock on the wood, don't have as much as staffing issues, but it's a blessing where that's one thing we don't have to worry about. We just want to operate the store, but the delivery side, and it's been great, a great differentiator for us for sure, being able to offer that delivery. And another thing I must say, that we're one of the first stores that got approved for food stamps via delivery among 7-Eleven. So we offer fresh produces at our stores as well at a reasonable price. We teamed up with a local company called Canebees Market. You might have heard
Yes.
of.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
We work with them to offer that, and being able to deliver that to seniors when they're at home and worried about, catching COVID. Even after COVID, our numbers look good for the delivery service. So it's been a great experience overall. But the lesson was, if we were still married to our code, probably would have still launched. If it launched, it would have been very, clinky. So teaming up with a party that has it figured out was the best thing we ever did.
I love it. I love it. And you mentioned being one of the first to do drive-throughs as well. So can you talk about how, resourceful that's been, or has it been a challenge? Has it been an obstacle, or has it always been like a good thing to have where you're like, wow, I wish other gas stations did this as well? And what are people normally buying when they come through the drive-through? So like, is it like, just cigarettes and like the typical stuff that they get at the front counter?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it helps if you're a mom or a father that's in a hurry to go to school, have their kids in the car, and you don't bring them all out, getting that temptation of sugar kicking in. But a lot of it helps to have the drive-through, and even if you have, pets and you don't want to get them out of the car and all that. So it was definitely a differentiator. But the main things that a lot of people buy are drinks, Monster drinks, 5-hour energy shots, cigarettes, you name it. We'll get them anything and everything pretty much from the store. Our independent store in particular, 24-hour drive-through service. So whatever you need from the store, we get it to you. So that definitely helps. As an entrepreneur or somebody that's business minded, you want to take inspiration from anybody and everybody. So we read a lot about this, through the National Association of Convenience Stores, where in other states people were doing drive-through. So I was like, okay, how can we do that? The challenge has become, if you have existing building, how do you embed that in there? It might have been even a drive-through at one point, but it got closed down because closed-mindedness, where convenience stores don't need drive-through. I'll tell you, definitely but I also in the past, some other people, took me on as a consultant to say, how do we add a drive-through in there? And they did. But if they can't back it with operation, right? They got the fanciest headphones, everything. But if the staff doesn't have a buy-in, it doesn't work. And 3 months later, they closed down the drive-through. But we're happy that anytime we committed to it, we see it through to make sure it works. And you always get customers' feedback. So instead of running and grabbing stuff, we started doing the cooler next to the drive-through, small size cooler. And we're very data driven. So we could tell what SKUs move a lot quicker than the other. So we carry the Monster, the Red Bull SKU for sure. But you don't want to put Rockstar in there because Rockstar energy doesn't move as quickly as a 5-hour energy, right? So we try to get the right SKUs at the right time to the right people.
I love that. And you mentioned being data driven. How influential was that from your background? And you talked about you had a stint at a Sprint, you talked about a stint at JFK in a specific role. So how did those roles from like your past prior to engaging full-time as an entrepreneur influence the business or help you? Like what skills may you have pulled from that background and implemented into Fav Trip?
A great question. I love it. This is good. So I tell everybody, no matter what experience you had, for me, it feels like a full 360, right? So when I worked at JFK Airport, I understand the IT side of things. So I wasn't afraid to take on a code or do the delivery thing, right? One of our stores has self-checkout, the network, how do you connect them? And all that helped me there. And when you're in New York or LA, usually you're involved with, short films for fun and this and that, trying to be. I had friends that on the weekend we would shoot short film. That kind of helped me with the YouTube channel, right? Hence the YouTube channel, right? If I worked at Dunkin' Donuts, construction, there was a lot of things about the customer service and even how I got treated from my bosses, good or bad. I took that and I said, if I have a company, I'm going to give my staff a month advance schedule. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So taking all that, so all experience, you combine it and kind of apply it. So in your life, even in college, sometimes there's a certain class you might have taken. This is not useful at all, but later down your career path, you might find it useful going down the line. For me, it definitely feels that way. I take all my IT experience, my background, my parents really pushing me to work hard, and that allows me to take on a challenge where I was willing to put in the 5 a.m. to close at 12. It didn't, otherwise I think mentally, if I wasn't ready for that, if they didn't got me ready, I would have given up within the first year or less. But let alone surviving for 3 first years and working 7 days a week nonstop, trying to make it happen. So it was interesting combining all that experience. So any entrepreneur listening, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this, is like, see where you want to be, in the future or later. Like I might have a desire, I want to develop a video game, for example. What do I like? Instead of just playing the game, maybe understand why you like it and understand who made it, maybe apply for an internship there, right? And things like that, or read about the CEO if you want to, start a company or and all that. So I think all your experiences matter, good or bad, take it for face value and find ways to apply it and learn from that.
I love that. And that kind of makes me think, like, just a quick recommendation for folks out there. Like if you're literally about to start a business and you have some experience from some of your past jobs, negative or positive, maybe like create a little T-chart, like all the positive things you liked about your boss or your experience at your old jobs, and all the negative things you didn't like. And then you can kind of like take that framework and apply it to your new business, especially when it comes to how you're treating your staff or how how you're putting out schedules. Like some of the things you mentioned, I was like, boom, yeah, that's a major key, because I'm definitely like, oh, we didn't get our schedule until 2 days before the next week. This is shitty. Like this is pissing me off. Like blah,
Well,
blah, blah.
I worked at Dunkin' Donuts and I was on a Sunday, and a Monday I was on the thing where, is he gonna send me my schedule? I didn't know if I'm opening, and it's like 9 p.m. and I was like, God, if I ever have a business, and I didn't think I will at the time, I was like, I'm gonna make sure. And our staff, minimum a month advance schedule. All of them get that. We want them to have a personal life. So yeah, back to your point, like really learning from that and doing, because you want to put yourself in their shoes as well. It's not always like, people say you're dedicated to the company. There's no life besides work. And we want you to, because our policies come happy, leave happy, not just for customer, but staff as well. You can't do that if you don't have a personal life at all. When they get off work, we don't want them to worry about coming back to work at all. Oh, this person didn't show up. So we're very picky on who we bring in. And a lot of the culture side of things, we do take that from Quick Trip and learn from them as well, for sure.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. And I want to talk about the large like volume of South Asian individuals running gas stations across America. Can you talk or can you speak to that in any way? I know you said when you guys came to Kansas City, it's because you were speaking with, you know, other convenience store owners in the local area. So like, not to assume that they were South Asian, but like with the South Asian community just being large, you go into most gas stations across the town, you're gonna run into somebody.
Unless they're a big chain, they're usually owned by a corporate company, you know, like Quick Trip or something. But the locally owned and operated, are and there's definitely a reasoning behind that. At least what I come to understand as well. A lot of if they're immigrants and you know they've been driving a cab all their life, they have some saving, they want to use that. So the gas station is not as challenging, you know, compared to tell them to work for, you know, Intel or IBM, unless they went to the college for that particular job. It's a different story. But a lot of people, like I know some people that talk bare minimum, at least when they started, bare minimum English and pointing, and they literally, some of them will have to say, point at which Marlboro brand you want or whatnot. And eventually they catch on to, hey, how's it going? Good morning. And I've seen people that came to the country a year later, they're speaking perfect English, right? So I think the operation side of things is not as difficult for some people. Like they say, oh, worst case scenario, nobody comes, I'll just stay here and work the shift, right? Save on payroll, whatever. So I think the language barrier is definitely appealing, where the operation side of things is not as intense. You know, you're not running a restaurant where you're cooking and doing this and that. You just scan and go and wishing people well, right? A lot of people in a hurry already. I think that definitely appeals to a lot of, you know, immigrant families for sure.
I love it. And, you know, on the topic of family, you know, I want to ask you, you know, you're a father of four. How do you think about entrepreneurship when you're speaking to your kids and then balancing that with like education? And the only reason why I asked from that perspective is just right now with this new generation, everyone's either this or that. I know you said that you're not that with that mindset, but like they're either college only or like go out there and get a trade. So I assume your children are young. So as you're raising them, like how do you think about like how you're going to guide them around entrepreneurship or making money or college? Like where do you think you're leaning in terms of your recommendations or when you're going to be having these conversations?
Just like myself, like I had, you know, my parents might have thought a different pathway for me, and I kind of, you know, made my own. And eventually you do that, right? For me, first and foremost, I want them to be good human beings that care for everybody, right? And take care of themselves. But I'd necessarily have not set anything in motion for them to say, you're either an entrepreneur or you're going to do a business. And they're quite young. I have a 4-year-old all the way to my oldest daughter is 15. So I want them to carve their own path. You know, nothing was, you know, handed to me. I had to find my way in this country. And this is definitely the land of opportunity. You know, if you're hardworking, you put your mind to it, you could definitely, you know, the odds are not stacked against you compared to when you're in other countries. You need to have a good last name in Pakistan and elsewhere if you're going to make it anywhere, unfortunately. But here, you know, I was a doorman. I opened doors for rich folks back in the day, but I kept studying computers. Almost got fired from doing that. And eventually I landed the job at the airport, and I thought, this is it. You know, I found the American dream. My father was a doorman, actually, and I was settling in at the doorman job. But soon I realized this country has a lot more to offer. So back to your point, for me, in particular, even college, I tell them, understand, like I'm encourage them a lot to read books like Start With Why by Simon. Element, Finding Your Element is another good book. Strength Finder, which I mentioned earlier in the interview, is a good one. Like you take that survey and it gives you 4 key, you know, traits that you should really hone in on. If you feel that early stages, it might be hard for you to tell because you're young, but eventually that's something that you want to hone in on.
Talk about how that book helped you. Talk about how Strength Finders helped you, and like what what character traits did you identify really, identify with you? You're like, oh, I'm an achiever. Oh, I'm this. So like, talk about how that book helped you and like how you've been able to apply that to real life and especially as a business owner.
Yeah, one of the ones that stood out to me was like the life learner one, was out there for sure. So I was like, I could understand sometimes when the semester was over and business is running good, why do I feel sad, depressed? Then I was like, something's missing. And I was like, I think I miss going back to college. I need to continue to keep going. Before I thought like, no, I has to, trying to pinpoint it. And then anytime I'm at college, I'm learning something and having a place to apply. I was the happiest I could be, right? So that really I had to hone in and accept that more than ever. An achiever as well, like setting a goal, achieving it, and setting myself out of the way of the staff and letting them take over. And then some people more would be focused on ongoing operation. That wasn't for me. I would like to get in, set a goal, achieve it, and step away. And the other book I mentioned, Start With Why, like sort of a health journey as well. A lot of entrepreneurs, and to all the entrepreneur listener, they put their health last, right? When I started the business, even during the business, I weighed 220 pounds. Like I was not taking care of my health. Then I went for a physical checkup. My chest was hurting. And I made a video about that on our YouTube channel too, that seemed to be well received. My doctor told me I need to lower down my cholesterol. And that was my why, Start With Why. And I was happy to reading that book. I was like, my why is I want to be around for my kids, healthy as I could be. And I started making better choices. It's really hard working in a convenience store surrounded with food that is very
A lot of snacks, a lot of snacks and energy drinks.
Yeah, exactly. So, choosing an apple that we sell, a banana over a Snicker bar, which I did on the daily before. So I got down as 143. Now I'm sitting at 160 because my family started being concerned and everybody was like, oh my God, something's wrong. And anybody I met, they thought something was wrong and take them to the side. But I'm holding it down at 158, 160 now, but I feel great. And my
Yeah,
doctor,
dive into that a little bit deeper because I saw that story actually not from your page but from Micah's, from HitchFit's owner. Yeah, so can you talk about that story, like maybe one challenge and then one like really huge win? I know you just shared the awesome transformation from a weight perspective, but like how good did you feel? Like what was a really challenging wall that you faced that Micah helped you overcome, or was there any mindset shift that you had to change around food or around snacking that really helped you like develop a new mental framework or strategy around eating or exercise that helped you like achieve that goal, or was it just strictly discipline?
No, discipline on its own is not enough, right? So, and back, I'm glad you know Micah as well. So, when they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I wasn't quite ready for a lot of people go in the mindset of let me join a gym, let me hire a trainer, all that. And I've done that in the past, and I will lose 10, 15 pounds, get to 190 and hit straight back up. Take like 3, 4 months to lose some, 10 pounds, gain it back within a matter of weeks, right? So it was the wrong way of doing things, and the eating and everything, the mentality really had to change. And I think it came down to the daily habits. And the other book I'll recommend is the Atomic Habit book, is really powerful. And recognizing, okay, what do I do when I go to the store? Okay, I'm grabbing a coffee, then I'm grabbing a grandma cookie, and then a Starbucks Frappuccino at the store at 8. How about if I change that and I got a Kind bar? That has less and be very about going back to being intentional, right? So doing all that, then I reached a point where I was like 175 and I was like, okay, I'm happy. Back then I couldn't go out for long walks with my kids or play with them. I didn't have the energy or even the mindset. I just want after work, I want to be left alone, kind of moody as well about it. Now I feel great when I'm telling them, let's go biking, let's go do this. But there's a big shift and I'm a lot happier than I was before. But being intentional, it was definitely a challenge, going from fatty, oily food, especially from Asian family, that spicy, hot food that everybody, over the weekend, being the guy that wants dash and white eggs now, right? But I do have my weekly cheat meals, but overall, it matters what you do a lot. And Simon, I'll quote as well from the book, you don't brush your teeth one day 8 times, right? 8 days, if you brush them, it produces results. It's not that one day that you did it for 8 hours, kind of idea. So same thing with the gym. You have to have a hard time taking me to gym. now I have a hard time getting out of it. Like the day I don't go, I feel sad. So it had to change, but it didn't happen again. A lot of people want that instant gratification change in a matter of a month. This pin has a long 2-year journey. And this is the longest I ever have kept my weight off. And I plan on keeping it off for sure. Because I
Hell
know
yeah.
what's on the opposite side is it's not good.
Exactly. You've
Like this.
experienced that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oftentimes, unfortunately, it has to get to that point for a lot of people where they have to experience the pain, or the future pain has to be really communicated well to them for them to understand that they don't want to go in that direction. So either they have to experience it, or somebody has to help them visualize that future pain that they'll face if they continue down this path. And
Yeah.
so I really love, I was learning about your story, and then I saw your post pop up from Micah post pop up about you, and that made me even more happy. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. Although it's been a few months since we've initially connected, I'm really happy that we're able to make this one happen today. So I have a few final questions for you before we wrap up, because I want to respect the hour time frame we've allotted for the show. But you're a father of 4, and I want to ask you, what has been the happiest and what has been the most challenged you've been during your time as a father? So I know it's been 15 years of being a father. What has been
Yeah.
the happiest moment that you can think of? I'm sure there's thousands, but what's the happiest moment that can come to your mind? And then what's the biggest challenge, and how have you been like working to overcome that?
Yeah, I think the happiest is being able to manage, finally having a schedule, right? Making my own schedule. And what I mean by that is being able to spend time with each individual kid, making them the highlight of the day kind of thing, where like being able to give them that time and then making time for yourself makes me the happiest. And the happiest, let's call it a good week. If I had a good week, giving everybody their fair time and then making time for yourself is the happiest I could be, right? Challenging times are usually when everything at the store is going well, not going well, and things are falling apart, and I keep having to step in, and I didn't delegate or didn't set things in motion properly, and it frustrates me, or the customer experience is going bad. You know, that becomes a challenge for sure. And then it's like when you're not enjoying operating the business, it's not a business anymore. It's like a job as well. It turns into a job, right? So those are the kind of things that frustrate me. But it used to be an everyday thing back in the days. We're talking about 9, 10 years ago. Now it's like I push it down far enough where I do have a good 6 months, 7 months, and then one day that it pops up where everybody so happens to be sick, things are not working, pumps are going out of order, the tech company's not coming. But I notice I'm not as frustrated as I used to be, right? I will go in and start troubleshooting myself, and I can only be so many places at once, right? But it doesn't frustrate me as I used to. Going back to the mindset of being okay with there's only so much I could do as one human being, right? And same thing, I have to translate that to our staff as well. There's only so much you could do. If Google Fiber or somebody's internet is down, there's not much you could do about it. I mean, there's only so much you could do, but we set things in motion where you do have back. If there's an option out there that we could have used to solve, or we learn from it, we want to do that when things go back up and going. So anytime things are frustrating, it usually has to do with operations, when things are not going the way we want them to be, or having some bad hires where we didn't recognize certain things but I think the biggest blessing, the thing that makes me really happy, is being able to make my schedule. And that's not a schedule that says Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5. As entrepreneurs, you make a schedule where, if I made 3, 4 good decisions for the business and I could call it a day, 2 hours later, I'm okay with that. Or going back to the mentality of being able to work hard, I do have that mindset. I have to put in the hours, the brainstorm, everything, and it takes me 12 hours, I'm going to do that, right? So those are my happiest and sometimes frustrating days for sure, currently.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. I did want to quickly touch on, you were mentioning the National Association of Convenience Stores and that you joined their content committee. So I know you've been killing it on YouTube. So any recommendations you have for any other, we can say entrepreneurs in general, but let's just speak specifically to people who might be interested in the convenience store space, the gas station space. around content creation, like any tips, any guidance for those folks out there? Because you're killing it on YouTube, and make sure you plug that before we sign out today. But yeah, you're killing it on YouTube, you're killing it on Facebook. So share
Definitely.
whatever comes to mind.
Anytime we're learning about a new industry, I think going to a trade show definitely helps to open your eyes what this industry is about. I think that's usually a good shortcut, right? Like right now, we're trying to look at, for example, we have some space and we want to learn more about the beauty hair supply kind of thing. So Atlanta has a trade show. I might go to that. Fav Trip wants to do more private label. Chicago, we have an upcoming trade show that I'm going to attend. So I think if somebody's wanting to learn, National Association of Convenience Stores is a great resource, and they're very super helpful. If you even want to call and just learn and ask them questions, they're more than willing to guide through that. And when it comes to YouTube, trial and error, a lot of people start off really high where I'm going to kill it. I'm going to be the next Mr. Beast, which is great. But you got to be in for a passion for the long run and keep your expectations low, right? Before when it comes to YouTube. So any industry you want to dive, I think the shortcuts usually, like if I had to dive into YouTube again, I'll probably go to the Vid Summit kind of YouTube kind of thing, where go in there or just buy their, after COVID, a lot of these trade shows allow you to buy into their video classes that they gave. If you can't afford to go or spend time and be away from work or family, that's usually one good one. Now, there's another one, Social Media Examiner. When I was in the dive of learning all about social media, Facebook, Snapchat, I just bought it. I went to San Francisco one time, and then the next time, a couple of years later, when I wanted to sharpen up my skills again, I bought all their classes instead of paying attending and spending a couple of grand, a couple of $100, got all their classes and watched each one of them and took notes and apply that. So that's my advice to everybody when you're trying to dive into an industry, new or convenience stores as well.
I love it. You mentioned your 3 main locations for Fav Trip. And then you also mentioned, the YouTube and Facebook. So before we sign out of here today, can you make sure you plug the addresses for those locations for those who listen and live locally in Kansas City? And then can you plug your social media so they can find you and continue to support moving forward?
Yeah, thank you. So we have Fav Trip in Independence at 10507 East 23rd Independence. The second Fav Trip we have is at 9500 Blue Ridge Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri. And we build one from ground up, which was one of my bucket lists, to build a store from ground up, which you've probably seen some progress online. And we're finally open, 3 weeks strong and going. So that address is 6501 Main Street, Grandview, Missouri. And a side note about Main Street, Grandview was the first area where I learned to be a cashier. And now 16 years earlier, we build our store there. So American Dream is alive and well. And our YouTube channel, go check us out. We're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers. YouTube.com/favtrip, FAVTRIP.
I love it. I love it. Babir, thank you so much today. This conversation has been amazing. I hope we can run it back for a part 2 later in 2023 to just see where growth is happening in the business and how things are going. My goals are to be able to have as large of an audience and fan base as you, man. So I'm just trying to catch up. You're an inspiration. The final question for today is, it's your last day on earth. You're 150 years old. You've lived a life that you've wanted to live, healthy, strong, happy. Your kids are amazing. There's being a great source of light for the world. Fav Trip is booming, but it's your last day on earth and your great-great-grandchildren are sitting at your feet and they ask you, great-great-grandpa, what's one piece of advice on how to live a good life? What are you going to tell them?
Be a good human being and care for others. Treat them how you want to be treated, and you will live a happy life for sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Babir, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the show. Make sure you leave a 5-star review, as that's the only way we can grow. Share with a friend. Tag us on Instagram. Tag us on LinkedIn. We appreciate you. This is your boy, CIZZY, signing out.